Hi, this is Dr. Michelle Maidenberg, and I'm here with Signe. She wrote this terrific book, and I have it right here in front of me. It's called The Space in Between, an Empath's Field Guide. And I'm really excited to have her here. Her book is going to be launched in the next couple of weeks, and she'll talk a little bit about that. And we'll find more out about her, her book, what inspired her, and get into the depths of what you could learn from reading her book. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and I would love to hear, what inspired you to write this? Do you have any experience? Does it come from just where does that passion come from?
Well, thank you for having me, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to sharing what I know about being an empath because I identify as an empath, and I'm a spiritual counselor by profession, and my inspiration actually came because back in 2007, I want to say I was checking out of a grocery store, and there was an Oprah magazine on the side, and it had big title, Beware of the Sponge People. And I was really intrigued about this one, that I was happy to see that mainstream media was covering this topic, and Martha Beck was the author. She had a monthly column with them. So I picked it up and I took it and I started to read it. And what really surprised me was how much, at the time, you have to remember this is many, many years ago, but there was a lot of fear-based language in describing what a sensitive, empathic person was contending with in the world and in life, and that they needed a lot of protection, and this is how you went about protecting yourself. And there was even like small little headers of beware of the dark arts and things of that nature. And I know it was in the time of Harry Potter, so maybe they were just, the publicists and the editors were trying to capitalize on that. But I couldn't shake that. Why was there, particularly in the spiritual industry at that time, there was a lot of you must protect yourself. And I had never experienced my empathic sensitivities as something that I had to fear or protect in a way. It was actually, I viewed it as a protective feature for me. And so I then went and
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it almost sounds like it's a weakness. Like
what
it's some, yeah, the way you're describing it, like it's a weakness, like it's something negative.
you wrote
I
the article was, yeah, the article was, and a lot of what I was reading, or if you attended workshops, it was focused outwardly about how you and the
I think it got a little cut off. I think we're good now.
okay, something happened, you were like frozen.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. So I'm not sure where I got cut off, but this had me start to investigate, and I'm a very mechanically inclined person. I want to re-engineer something to understand its function and its purpose. And so even though I would have thought I could say that I'm empathic, that I'm sensitive, I never really focused on that. People came to me because I was a spiritual counselor. So I really took a deep dive into my own understanding of energy and consciousness, and what I sensed happened when somebody who is empathic receives an impression from the environment, from the land, from a room, from a person. And what I discovered is that your energy fields actually expand. And so there is this, concept of the sponge is our mascot. Empathic people are spongy, and that is because we are sensitive to subtleties, but we also absorb information and energy from the environment. But where I think the biggest misconception is that just because we absorb it, it doesn't mean that it has to be ours, and it doesn't have to be ours to process. In fact, your energy fields expand maybe up to a foot or two while it takes in this information, and it actually holds it there for you to discern. Is it yours? How's it relevant to you? Is there anything you need to do? And once you have this awareness that this feature is protective in protective in design almost, you can really stop being so like hypervigilant about what you receive, because you are given an opportunity to discern what to do with this information. But what, and understand that, you know, because I'm a physical empath, meaning I feel very much in my body. So when I say that it has it holding off to the side, you're nonetheless, because of the physical realm is a little bit of a different dimension than the energetic, you're still feeling it. You're still feeling pain maybe. So it's very hard to say, oh, I'm feeling this, but it's not really mine. It's not really mine to do with. But in actuality, if you just acknowledged it, took time to figure out, what should you do with this information, you would find that you could move smoothly through your day a much easier and empowered and centered in your own authenticity.
Wow. So when you're referring to the word empath, because I know that word is, again, sometimes it's used as a layman's term and it's kind of thrown around. So I'm going to say, especially today.
Yeah.
How are you defining it? Like, what is that? What does that entail? So a person, like, so for example, what type of person would be the ideal person to read your book? Who are you speaking to?
I think my book, I took 10 years to write it because it is a somewhat abstract subject and I needed to find language. One of my blurbers said I put words to the wordless, and it took me that long to really find a way to articulate what is happening energetically and viscerally for people. But I would say that my book is written in a way that if you knew someone who was sensitive, if you yourself was sensitive, if you already know that you're an empath, you're still going to gain awareness and maybe a deeper understanding, because each chapter has questions and prompts. And so it is a book designed for self-exploration and discovery. And I do feel that my definition, I'm kind of coming out here a little bit controversial. And I say very clearly early on in my book that no one is born an empath. Because where I want to distinguish here is about self-awareness and self-development and consciousness. And we can be born sensitive and empathic, meaning we are wired, our nervous system is receiving this information. It's in a larger communication than maybe somebody else. But the empath is when you have moved from passively receiving information in the environment, just like your nose passively smells things that's in the environment. But when you go into an active phase, where, like, say, if you did smell something and you want to investigate what is that smell, who's cooking something, you've gone into an active role. And I say that when you are an empath, it is when you recognize that you are receiving information from the energetic realm and you go and investigate it or you interact with it. Because to interact and to investigate takes a little bit more consciousness and awareness with energy. And, it takes intentionality and ethics. So for me, if I hear someone say I'm an empath, I would hope that means that they understand that they are interacting energetically with something with intention. And so right now you have a lot of people buzzwords with empathy, empathetic, empathic, empath. And to me, it would be that the physical world where we see our neighbor struggling and we have empathy for them, and I can be empathetic. But in the energetic world of emotions and the mental plane, that is where an empathic receptivity is happening and where an empath skills are developed. So it really is, you've got the physical and then you have the energetic, and when you come together and you honor all of those, because you're not just separated, you have each of those, that is more or less an integrated consciousness, when you can understand that your instincts and your intuition serve you. So I hope I put that into an explanation there.
So is there key points, obviously it's a really long book and you've written a lot of very, very important information. But usually, when you write a book, you have in mind, what you want your reader to get out of the book. What do you want them to walk away with? What is like, really critical, the critical lesson or something that they will help them improve their lives. Is there anything specific?
Well, yeah, there's several, but one is that I believe strongly that there are a lot of sensitive people, middle age, perhaps. I'm 57, so I'm a little bit on the other end of middle age, but that are struggling with feeling sensitive or overwhelmed, just in the way that life is presenting itself right now, and not understanding that they could be empathic and receiving information and just accepting it as their own. It's very difficult to process something that isn't yours. And so it can lead to being overwhelmed, and I would really like to give them a chance to look at their own life, their own perceptions, do little experiments with themselves to see where do they fall on this spectrum of maybe being a highly sensitive person to being empathic. And because you can be both, you can be a little bit, it's a whole gamut there. But what's empowering is understanding your sensitivities and the source of them. Whether you're highly sensitive to environmental triggers or
Mhm.
emotional triggers, understanding your sensitivities is you actually coming home to your own body and to your sensory nature. And that is a beautiful thing to be embodied, to feel safe in your own skin, your own body, to feel that you are connected to yourself. And so that is, I would say, one of my main motivators is,
Mhm.
because I kind of joked with someone once that, if half the world is depressed, it could be because, a quarter of them are empathic and feeling it, and they don't realize they're feeling the other half. And so if everyone would just look
Yeah.
at their own stuff, we could clear up a lot of the toxicity, because we have pollution, we see pollution on the physical plane, but there's toxicity in the emotional and mental plane, and we each serve humanity by taking care of our own thoughts and our emotions and owning what we generate, what we create.
Mhm.
And secondly, language. Language is a huge theme in this book. I have two of my four children were born with language disorders. So I learned through our own life and through being an empath that your connection to language and being able to name something is very important to feeling safe with yourself and being able to regulate. I talked earlier that 15 years ago it was all about protection, and now we've moved into an era where it's about inward and regulation, how to regulate your emotions, how to regulate your nervous system. And so to me, these are just awesome positive signs of showing how this evolution of coming home to ourselves, and that is what I like to share with everyone.
Yeah. And I hear an element of also like self-acceptance. Like
Yeah,
that's a real theme. Just listening to you speak, that's the word that kind of popped out for me.
yeah. Well, and belonging, I mean, belonging is another big theme I cover, because I think when you feel different, when you feel like there's not a clear way to identify yourself. And I bring up in the dictionary, if you look up empath, it says its origins is science fiction and fantasy. And
Wow.
so that's my first chapter, no longer science fiction, because we need to take the language away from this kind of boxed in perception, and expand it and broaden it and give everyone a chance to be able to communicate who they know they are.
Yeah. And I have to say, I see that all the time in my practice.
Well,
And I see it at all different ages, where people come and they experience themselves as being too much.
mm,
Yeah, and how that affects negatively, obviously, like self-confidence, right? And self-belief and self-worth and self-compassion and self-love and on and on and on. And especially those messages that were communicated, like both, overtly
Mm.
and subliminally that they take on, and it becomes unfortunately integrated in a negative way. So I
Right.
definitely do see that, sure.
Right. And this book, I hope, will help people start to see where they have just accepted a narrative,
Yeah,
they're from their family, their culture, any experience that they, maybe didn't process in a holistic way.
mhm,
And so this is going to help them kind of identify too, when you take on a label of HSP or an empath or an empathic, I encourage people to say, where did you hear the term? What did you think it was? And how does it relate to you?
mhm,
And I give people an opportunity when they read the book to define for themselves, what does their sensitivity mean? How would they define being an empath? Because though I have my truth and my understanding, I'm only offering myself as a guide, and that's why I call it a field guide.
mhm,
Your own life experiences are customized to bring out your empathy in ways that, maybe my life wouldn't have had that direct experience. And I really honor direct experience because that is your knowing. And intuition is a knowing sense. You know you are more than your five senses, but each person's life is primed to reveal, your deeper, more authentic self to you.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm also thinking about how it carries over into our interpersonal relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's all covered too, right? It's
Mhm.
yeah, very, very, very directly.
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, my husband, I have in the book, I said, if you were to ask my husband what does an empath mean or living with one, it's that I kind of know what he feels before he does. Um, so I think, when you realize that you have this capability of sensing what other people are feeling, um, you have to be ethical because, it's their life and they need their privacy as well. And they need compassion because the one thing I discovered is mostly what I pick up is what people haven't processed because they're either in denial and so they've pushed it out in their energy fields. And so they're not intending it to be intercepted by anyone. And the fact that we just have a larger, mechanism in which to pick up stuff, it brings it back to, I also say an empath is on a spiritual path because when you can witness somebody else suffering and not try to fix it for them, but just offer them space,
Mhm.
you need compassion, and how can you listen and witness in compassion without overstepping boundaries? And that's a very much part of the book as well. It's like, where's the spiritual maturity within being an empath?
Yeah, it's so rich.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So I know that you mentioned, I know the book is going to be published in the next couple weeks. So I was wondering if are you doing any, in terms of publication, marketing, where could people get the book? Where could they find you? Like anything that you could offer them.
Yes, actually, it's publishing day, pub date is Tuesday the 12th, so next week.
Yes.
Um, and I'm very excited about that. And it's available right now for pre-order on all major bookstores online, or you could even ask at your local bookstore. I am doing a virtual book launch. I live normally in Norway, and I've traveled around the world a lot, living in different places. So I wanted a virtual book launch so everybody could attend. And so it's October 20th. And I'm very fortunate to have Christine Carlson, who will be kind of acting as my MC. She and her husband Richard had wrote the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series. And it's at 5 p.m. Pacific time, but it's an Eventbrite. And if you come to my website, which is www.smhovem.com, there's a promotional banner at the top of my website, and I'll just say, click here, and it'll take you to register. It's free. It's going to be held on Zoom. and it's approximately an hour. And I really hope you buy the book when it comes out, and it would give you 10 days or so to read through. And if you have questions, you can, ask me a question at the end. I'm going to do a Q&A, and I really look forward to meeting my audience.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. So I'm going to remind everybody, this is what it looks like. And I was honored to get a copy, so I want to say that. But it's the space in between, the Empath's Field Guide. So it's really comprehensive. Yeah, a guide, a full guide. And I think also what I really like about it is how you normalize, and
Mhm.
also, really it's empowering.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, which is so important, I think, especially when you're walking away from committing your time and effort into doing something, you want to walk away with something. So,
Yeah.
yeah, people could definitely expect to get something out of reading it. So I want to say that. Yeah.
Thank you. I really wanted to demystify it, and because we fear what we don't quite understand, and we give it power it may not actually have. So by demystifying it, and I really try to talk in terms that I hope anyone can come in and look at intuition maybe a different way than they had before, and come away feeling empowered. Yeah.
Uh, So thank you so much. It was so nice meeting you.
Thank you so much,
Best
Michelle.
of luck next week. It's so exciting.
Yes.
Um, yeah, and everybody, I will post this so they'll have your information and be able to purchase the book, and then also go to the launch. And I encourage, everybody to take advantage and actually come to the book launching, and also be able to ask questions and engage with you too.
Thank you
Okay.
so much, Michelle. I appreciate your support.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.